Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our Insight 2011 webinar series. Brett Malone will be our presenter today, and he'll be talking with you about GENESYS, where Insight begins, specifically about enterprise integration with GENESYS. We're happy to answer any questions on or offline, depending on the nature of the question, following Brett's presentation. So please type your questions into the chat box at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side of the panel. And as I said before, we'll be monitoring that during the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you, either on or offline. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Brett.
Hello, everyone. This is Brett Malone, and it's great to be back with you. I'm the host here today for your webinar, for the SVitech GENESYS webinar. And we appreciate your attendance. We hope you're finding value out of these presentations. And I want to make sure that you know that we're recording these. These are going up on our SVitech website. And there's a full archive. So plenty of MBSE candy for you at our SVitech website. Please be sure to hit that for any previous webinars as we collect more and more on these series. Today we're going to be talking about using GENESYS, which is our brand new platform. We're very excited to be launching this, and in particular we're going to be talking about the integration capabilities. One of the things that became very obvious early on in the development of GENESYS was the need and the strategy to have this open and available. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the integration aspects of GENESYS, how we can open up the model-based systems engineering process to receive sources of information from all across your enterprise. And enterprise, we use this term very loosely. This could be a two-person engineering firm. It could be a 20,000-person engineering organization. It really doesn't matter. The goal here is that we're exposing data to your models. Briefly about SVitech, if you're not familiar with SVitech, our focus in the market is solutions for model-based systems engineering. We provide a variety of software tools and methodologies, and you may have heard of us or you may know us through the Core line of products, where we provide model-based systems engineering. Core has been out on the market for many, many years, and it's a very stable platform for providing deep modeling, simulation, analysis, so integrating requirements, functional analysis, architecture design, and V&V. Strata is our methodology where we can provide a layered approach for you to decompose your models, be able to understand how to analyze your system that you're looking at and put that into a logical model. And then, of course, today we're going to talk about GENESYS. SVitech has been in business in the system engineering community for 20 years. We've been providing services. We have a very talented team of professionals that can parachute into your organization and be troubleshooters, problem solvers, and they bring very powerful software tools packed in their backpack to help you out. So we really understand this business and this domain, and we focus and we're committed to this domain. One of the things that we heard when we talk about GENESYS, and in particular when we talk about bringing a new product into this market, it's very important that we listen to what our customers need and are saying. It'd be foolish for us to go out to market with a product that wasn't based on feedback from our customers. So we absolutely have listened to what you said you needed, and we heard three things. One, most importantly, that we continue to maintain a rigorous modeling environment. You know, we didn't want to bring a product to market that was just a drawing package. You know, other products are out there on the market where they will help you very easily draw lines and boxes, but there's nothing behind the scenes. So we take great pride and commitment in serving the system engineering environment to do dedicated tools that have some rigorous modeling capability under the hood. An open API, which you're going to hear a little bit more about today, which means that you can get sources of data plugged into your model from anywhere. This might be an Excel spreadsheet. It might be a DOORS database where you've got requirements packed in somewhere that you need to expose. Or it might be a project management tool where you need to connect your model with cost and schedule analysis. And then finally, we also understand the complexities of this particular type of product, and we understand that it's important for you to make it very easy to use. So we've adopted some very simple standard technologies that help you get up to speed faster. By that, we've leveraged a lot of the Microsoft look and feel with the interface. We've also adopted standard SQL Server on the back end as the database, which means your IT infrastructure will be able to adopt this more easily and more readily. So all the standard technology means it's easier to use and it's easier for your IT enterprise to get it up and running. We're going to focus today on the APIs we talk about. Our theme for this particular webinar is enterprise integration. And our strategy is to talk a little bit about how we use GENESYS as a platform to model complex systems from requirements through functional analysis, through architecture, design, and V&V. Most importantly, though, we talk about how do we feed that model with useful pieces of information. In the modeling environment, connections matter. And if you've been on a system engineering team for more than 10 minutes, you know that your ability to communicate the connections between people, data, projects, it's what will make your team stand out. So if you look, for example, at this work breakdown structure in a hierarchical view, you see immediately that we have a red box attached to a sublevel. This embodies what we mean by connectivity, because this red box is a risk, and the risk is driven from an analysis that we've done within our model. And what you're looking at is a clear picture of how a risk that's connected with a program structure can flag and trigger program management to understand what changes might have to happen in the program. And we wouldn't understand this if we didn't have this connectivity. So we're going to unpack this story a little bit and understand what it means, but our goal here is to show how does GENESYS help you draw these connections and draw these integration points. So let's take a look for just a minute about what it means under the hood. And we're going to dive into a few technical things, but hang on, it's not very complicated, and at the end of the road, we'll be sure we wrap this up and make sure that you understand how it all fits together. Under the hood of GENESYS, we have adopted a Microsoft standard stack, which means we're leveraging Visual Basic scripting. We have leveraged the .NET infrastructure, which allows us to provide a much higher degree of development speed. The product can be developed much more quickly, and the product quality is much higher because we're leveraging a lot of standard libraries. We also, under the hood, have provided a flexible open API. Now that means, if you're not familiar with that term, that means application programmer interface. That's just a fancy way of saying you can write code and talk to our schema. And the reason that's important is we know that when you're building models, you need to be able to interact with the data, and sometimes you want to interact with that at the schema level. That means that you go into the database, make some calls, add some functions, extract maybe a parameter or two from a particular entity, and then you can feed that information somewhere else. To date, a lot of our work that we did with Core, we had a limited API, we had some limited scripting, but we really didn't expose to the level of detail that we do now with GENESYS, and that has a big difference and an impact on how it can be used. We also have rebuilt the architecture in a way that it's easier to scale. By scalability, we just mean that, hey, you can have a team of 10 people that are distributed across the organization. Maybe you have a person in El Segundo, maybe you have someone in Reston, maybe you have someone in Dallas, and you can get all of these folks working together. But more importantly, as you add that 11th or 10th or 15th person, you can add the software and they plug and play right into the architecture. So the back-end server is much more scalable, which means your teams can grow with the software. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, the standardization of using SQL Server, which is a Microsoft standardized product, means that two things. One, it's a lot more IT friendly inside of your shop, so your CIOs are going to like it. And secondly, it's a lot easier to find people to do the specialized scripting. So it's a lot easier to find a Visual Basic scripting person who can do some specialized programming to talk to our API and do some introspection work or do some programming work around the SQL Server database. So those standard technologies make it easier for you to use the tool and most importantly, easier for you to find people to help you out when the time comes to do that. Now, without getting into a lot of detail, this is a picture for everything that I just said. So essentially, one of our goals was to show how, especially within Genesys Collaborative Edition, that you really have the ability to talk to the variety of data models. So this would be the stack that we just talked about, and this gray box really indicates what would one person be doing on a desktop. At this point, all of these elements that we talked about are stacked together, and they work on the desktop. However, the Genesys server sits off-site at another server location of your choice, internal into your network, into your infrastructure, intranet, or even hosted external. It's your choice. But the services layer of the server, that's what provides the communication over to the collaborative models. So this becomes a much more scalable infrastructure, which means you can do different things. Now, I promise you this is the most complicated chart of the day, so hang on and we'll navigate our way through this, and it will start to make sense as I start to walk you through the demonstration examples. Let's take a look at what this means, and in particular, we have our collaborative version that someone might be using as the Genesys user interface. But we can scale this up, and what that means is we use this server layer to host access, for example, third-party tools, to host access for an API that will allow us to talk to other applications. So the goal and the secret to the way we've architected this is the services layer. And again, this is just a fancy way of saying, hey, you know, I mean, we've created a smart layer that makes it very easy for you to talk to the Genesys and plug and play other tools so that you can integrate your data. So architecturally, we have a very smart design that allows us to leverage this layer of services. So let's talk about what it means in terms of some practical examples. I'm going to start with our first example. This is an example of how to bring terminology into your model. So we've all been here, and if you're familiar with this, you may have seen or used this, but this is the vocabulary OneSource. This is a tool that's used to provide common vocabulary for the Air Force and other DoD programs that hosts its vocabulary in a web services environment. Now, we've all been there in the process of developing a complex model. We're encountering we're building up the architecture, and it comes time to define, let's say, a UAV, for example. Well, some people call it a drone, some people call it an RPV, you might call it a UAV. You know, how do you standardize on language? Well, wouldn't it be nice if you had a way to plug into a web service that would give you that terminology directly? So in this example, we have written a very short script that talks to that vocabulary database. And we have empowered Genesys to reach out to that common vocabulary database that's hosted remotely. And when we ask for a particular definition for our architecture, we can provide that. In this screenshot example, we are using the vocabulary for the U.S. Air Force Doctrine Document, the AFDD, and these are air warfare terms. So this is a vocabulary database that has various schemas or terminologies behind it. And for example, we're looking for the definition of close air support. Now, again, that might sound like a pretty obvious thing that everyone knows what that means, but you would like to be able to have a standardized definition for that in your requirements, in your architecture definition, or potentially in your functional description of how how your model behaves. So we have linked to this system. We reach out and grab the common term for close air support, and you can see the definition and the type. We create the Genesys entity, and then in the next screenshot you'll see here, it adds the entity into our relationship. You can see now that it's added it into our element area. It's given it the proper name, and most importantly, it's populated the description with the information that's coming directly from the web service. So we didn't have to type this in. B, this is a standard terminology that we can use across our model. So being able to use GENESYS to reach out and access information and bring standard information into the model is one example of how you would use the API. For more details on this particular demonstration, we'd be glad to give you a live demo. We would be glad to sort of open the hood and show you how we did the code for this, and use it as a pathfinder for you to potentially integrate with other sources of data. The next example was presented at our user conference a couple weeks ago by Andy Zimbler, who from Booz Allen, and SVitech and Booz Allen had worked together to do a pathfinder for integration of program management information, cost modeling, and scheduling within a model-based system engineering environment. So we were very pleased and honored to be working with Booz Allen. We certainly greatly acknowledge and appreciate their cooperation, their participation in this, and we really appreciate and acknowledge their work in this field. And what I'd like to do is just walk you through a very high-level overview or an example of this application. And again, information on this one can be found at our website for in the community forum. And the community forum is a place at vitechcorp.com where you can see all the presentations from our user group. So we had a very successful user group where many case studies were presented. The SVitech development team presented a lot of details on the architecture and how you can leverage the architecture. And so we posted a lot of these presentations. This particular one, again, as I mentioned, was presented, and I'm going to walk you through just one or two charts and give you the high points of how we did this. And most importantly, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we leveraged the architecture and why it was designed the way it was designed. But as I mentioned, for more details, go to our community website. And most importantly, I would urge you, we would urge you to provide some of your comments and feedback. We've developed the community forum to provide a way for you to give us feedback, for you to engage in conversation with all of the users in the MBSE environment. So we're hopeful that our community forum will give you an opportunity to write some comments about what you think of this presentation, what you think of this particular application. And you know, if you think it's a good thing, if you think it's a bad thing, if you think it's there's a better way to do it, a different way to do it, we want to hear from you. So we definitely want to use the community forum and the ability to collect that feedback so that we hear from you. So with that commercial out of the way, I'll return to our regularly scheduled program, and let's talk a little bit about how we did this. So the most important thing for us was to show that we could expose the database, and we have the schema description here. Now, schema is a fancy word for saying, hey, this is how we've organized our data in our database. So this is a use case scenario. A little complicated, but if I walk you through it, it'll make a lot of sense. What we're doing here is a very simple mapping of information for the conversation between program management and systems engineering. What we found is when we talk with program managers, they don't necessarily understand all the details of systems engineering. And when we talk to systems engineers, they don't necessarily understand all the details or the elements of program management. Now, you can probably figure out I said that fairly politically correct. So I was very diplomatic about that. But the bottom line is these worlds need to communicate, and they need to have a common language. And what we've provided is a bridge between systems engineering and program management. And the reason we did that was program management can benefit greatly from the work that systems engineers do. However, they don't know necessarily how to plug that information in the right place, in the right way. So what we've devised is a way for you to use the work breakdown structure as a translation, if you will. Now, this is a two-way street. And the way we've architected this is that the program management will provide a skeleton or a high-level work breakdown. And the engineering environment, if you will will provide detail about the model, detail about the analysis of alternatives, and detail about the trades that are maybe necessary for the architecture to be successful, whether that means cost, performance, or risk. So the output of the engineering activity would be a comprehensive analysis of alternatives, or AOA, if you're familiar with that term. It's essentially saying, hey, here's how cost and schedule and risk are impacted by these technical choices that we're making. And you know what, if you ask me to reduce the schedule by 6 months, it's probably going to mean a different choice in technology, or it's going to mean a different choice in architectural components, or it may mean a different choice in the way we field the system. So these trade-off studies are important, and if you've been following any kind of acquisition reform, if you're in the DoD world, you know that this type of conversation is critical. So the way we use GENESYS to leverage this was to simply begin mapping between our API and, in the use case, the API and the world and the data that exists within project management, and the information that GENESYS provides as systems engineering tool. GENESYS, as you know, provides deep requirements analysis, functional requirements. It also provides a deep analysis of technical risks. And what we want to do is show that we can feed those technical risks up the chain, over the chain to project management. Project management obviously is concerned with the financial data, the staffing, the program estimates for completion, the earned value metrics. I mean, everything involved with successfully managing the project, and more often than not, surviving the down select so you win more business. So this mapping, as you can see in the center of the chart, we're passing information about work breakdown, structure, risk, task cost, schedule. Everything gets shared between the modeling environment and the program management environment. Now, you might think this is overkill, but what we found is just doing the mapping begins a very useful conversation with project management. And so the engineers realize there's a certain level of detail that they're exposing. There's a certain level of detail they keep in their wheelhouse. And, you know, not everything goes across this bridge. Only the information that's meaningful in both worlds go across this bridge. And again, as I mentioned, we can help you do that mapping, and you know, we can help you do that analysis to understand what needs to go across that bridge. And in our partnership with Booz Allen, we've been very fortunate to work with their mission engineering group, and we find that you know, those groups continue to have a good way of mapping what needs to go across these bridges and helping you design that structure. So that's an example of how GENESYS can be used and was used in the Pathfinder for integrating project management. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't close with a discussion that we had at our user conference. And this was just a quick ad hoc survey. By no means is this statistically sound. This was a simple survey of all the attendees of our conference. But what we found was a resounding positive response to the fact that we've opened up our API. And almost immediately we started getting feedback of things that people wanted to plug into the model. Obviously, if you're in the requirements management world, you're going to want to connect your requirements management information coming out of something like DOORS into your system model. You know, all of these tools where people are building pieces of the answer, GENESYS is an excellent integration environment to bring all those pieces of your design world into a logical, constructive model. Information, you know it as well as I do. Information is stored in the Excel spreadsheets. So you're gonna use Excel more often than not. I don't know about you, but I have seen more than once requirements management done in Excel. You start building up the tabs and you start building up the tables and the list, and all of a sudden you've got a mess on your hands. Wouldn't it be nice if you could connect Excel with GENESYS, do a big dump, connect everything into your requirements management within GENESYS, and you're off and running, building your model from traceable requirements. So we can help you do that now that we have this architecture. And then, you know, you pick your favorite tool. it was really interesting, and it was really telling to see the kind of feedback that we got from the variety of users. Everything from, Satellite Toolkit. People want to do operational modeling. They want to do conceptual modeling with their operational views and feed the results of their system model and use STK to maybe verify or test their operational concept. Very interesting. And again, being able to reach out through the GENESYS API, do the programming through the web services, and feed that data, either GENESYS data being sources of information or receiving other information to compile it all together into a clear story. So what I would urge you to do is to send whoever invited you to this webinar, or whoever from SVitech that you're working with, I would urge you to contact them and, hey, help us do this survey. Tell us what you want to connect with. If you're working with one of our reps in the field, make sure you let them know, hey, this is what we think would be useful to connect with, and we'll get it on the list. B, we'll start working with you to help you map that. So let me summarize and just really reiterate what we've talked about. We really have focused on broad connectivity. We've really focused on reducing the learning curve for new users so that it's easier to adopt this tool. And we've also are working very hard to make it easy for you to deploy it, and deploy it in a way that's meaningful, which means you can connect to more things and you can scale the framework up. So it's easier to get new users up and running. It's easier to reduce the risk within your IT shop so your CIO doesn't give you a hard time. And it's easier for you to connect to other sources of data so your modeling activities are a lot easier. So with that, I appreciate your time today. Again, my name is Brett Malone. We urge you to connect up with our contact site. And I will, at this point, we have some issues with our Q&A. So bear with me for just 1 minute. Gina, do you have an announcement you want to say on the Q&A side?
I think at this point, if everyone could email either myself or their national account representative, that would be, I think, the best way to get questions to us based on today's discussion.
Absolutely. We look forward to your feedback. We would love to have the open conversation in our forum. If you have a direct private question that you'd like to ask us, just send us an email and get that email out to us. And we'd love to have you take a look at GENESYS. We'd love to understand what your needs are within your organization, and try to help drive this to be a better solution for you. So there's lots of ways to connect up with us. Hit our website, vitechcorp.com, and hit our forum to where you can engage in a conversation with the community. Make sure that you take a look on our site for downloads for the presentations. The complete Booz Allen presentation is on our website. You can download that at our forum, and as is all the other presentations. As well, this webinar has been recorded and will be posted, so if you missed something, you can go back, download it, rewind it, and listen all over again.
Thanks. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.